My entire world was turned upside down on a rainy Tuesday night. My twin sister, Zoe, showed up at my apartment, her face so bruised I almost didn't recognize her. My perfect reflection was being destroyed by her own husband. When I held her, I could feel her body shaking with fear, and in that moment I made my decision. I would take her place. I would infiltrate that monster's home, uncover his secrets, and save her. I never imagined that by becoming my sister, I would uncover something far darker than simple domestic violence, a conspiracy that would change our lives forever. But before we get into that, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and drop a comment below letting us know what city you're watching from. We love to see how far our stories travel. I'll never forget that night. The persistent buzzing of the doorbell pulled me from my work, well past 11. I was on a tight deadline for a digital illustration project, completely in the zone. The buzzing continued, insistent, almost desperate. Annoyed, I put down my tablet and walked to the door. Through the peephole, all I saw was a dark, hunched-over silhouette. I opened it just a crack, wary. Who is it? The only answer was a choked sob. I recognized Zoe instantly. I threw the door open and she practically collapsed inside, soaked from the Chicago rain. I had to catch her to keep her from hitting the floor. The shock paralyzed me for a second. Her face, identical to mine in every feature since birth, was now a distorted mess. One eye was nearly swollen shut, a deep purple-blue color. Her lip was split and puffy, with angry red marks on her neck. "Oh my God, Zoe, what happened?" The words were automatic, but I already knew. I'd suspected it for months. She tried to speak, but only sobs came out, her whole body trembling as I guided her to the sofa. Her clothes were wet and dirty, as if she'd fallen several times on her way here. "It was Julian, wasn't it?" I asked, feeling a hot rage building inside me. Hearing her husband's name, Zoe flinched and cried harder, confirming my worst fears. Julian, the perfect husband she'd been married to for 3 years, the successful, respected, charismatic entrepreneur, the man I'd never trusted from day one. "I'm calling the police," I said, reaching for my phone. "No," Zoe grabbed my arm with surprising strength. "He'll find me, Chloe. He'll destroy us." I took a deep breath, trying to control my rage as I grabbed the first aid kit. I started to gently clean her face, and every whimper of pain from her fueled my fury. "How long has this been going on?" I asked, pressing a cold compress to her eye. "It started with shouting," she whispered, "then shoves, a slap here and there. Tonight was the worst. He's out of control." "Why didn't you tell me sooner? Why didn't you leave?" Zoe sobbed, clutching her arm as if it were broken. "I tried to get a divorce. He just laughed in my face, said he'd never let that happen." I frowned, confused. "What do you mean he won't let you? He can't stop you." "Chloe, there's something weird going on. I accidentally walked into his office yesterday. I saw these papers scattered everywhere. When I asked what they were, he went crazy. He hit me harder than ever and locked me in the room." She paused, her breathing ragged. "He keeps talking about an inheritance. He says I'm tied to him, that he'll never let me go." The mention of documents and an inheritance sparked something in me. This wasn't just a case of domestic violence. Something else was happening. "Stay here tonight." "We'll figure out what to do tomorrow," I said, helping her get changed. I put Zoe to bed in the guest room and gave her some painkillers to help her sleep. When she was finally asleep, I went back to the living room and sat on the same sofa where she'd been. There were blood stains on the cushions. A plan started to form in my mind. A crazy, dangerous plan. But it might be the only way to find out what Julian was hiding and free my sister for good. I walked to the bathroom and stared at my reflection in the mirror, the same face as the battered woman sleeping in the next room. We had always been identical, impossible for anyone who didn't know us well to tell apart. "You're not going to let her go, Julian," I whispered to my reflection. "Then it won't be Zoe you have to deal with anymore." The decision was made. I would become Zoe. I would enter that monster's house, discover his secrets, and gather the evidence to destroy him. As dangerous as it was the only way to save my sister. I spent the rest of the night researching Julian, his import company, his family. Everything on the surface seemed impeccable. A successful businessman, son of a socialite known for her charity work. But something didn't add up. When the sun began to rise, Zoe woke up with a muffled scream. I ran to the room and found her disoriented, panic setting in as she remembered the night before. It was just a nightmare, I murmured, sitting on the edge of the bed and holding her hand. Everything's going to be okay. In fact, I have a plan, I explained my idea. We would switch places. Zoe would hide somewhere safe, while I would go back to Julian's house, pretending to be her. Her reaction was exactly what I expected. Pure horror. "Are you insane?" she exclaimed, grabbing my arm. "He'll know. He'll hurt you. I can't let you do this." "Zoe, listen," I said firmly, looking her in the eyes. "You can't run forever. He'll find you. If we report this now, all we have is proof of domestic violence. He'll hire the best lawyers. He'll say you fell, that you're unstable, and he'll be out in a day." I paused, making sure she was listening. There's something more going on here. Something to do with those documents and the inheritance he mentioned. We need to find out what it is. We need to gather solid evidence to destroy him once and for all. For the next 4 hours, I conducted the most detailed interrogation of my life. I no longer saw Zoe as my sister, but as a source of crucial information. "What does Julian call you? Zoe or a nickname?" "Zoe, always Zoe." "What do you call him?" "Julian." "He hates nicknames. What's the house like?" "The routine?" "It's huge, 3 floors. He has an office on the 2nd floor that's always locked. It has a security system with a fingerprint and a code. And the staff? Who else lives there? The housekeeper, Maria, who comes every day but doesn't sleep there. And his mother recently moved in." I raised my eyebrows. "His mother? Eleanor. She moved in 2 months ago. That's when things got worse. She pretends to be sweet, but she's always watching me. She brings me these weird teas every night." A shiver ran down my spine. This was getting more and more sinister. "When will he realize I'm not you?" I asked. "We haven't slept in the same bed for months. He stays in the master bedroom, I'm in the guest room. It was risky, extremely risky. But maybe, just maybe, it was possible." I pulled some simple clothes from Zoe's bag. Nothing like my colorful, artistic style. I grabbed a pair of scissors and, ignoring her protests, cut my hair to the same length as hers. I put on her drab, lifeless clothes. The transformation was immediate. In the mirror, I no longer saw Chloe, the freelance illustrator. I saw Zoe, the oppressed wife. I arranged a safe place for Zoe to stay. My old studio, which I now only used for storage in a quiet town in Wisconsin. No one knew about that address. I bought a prepaid phone for emergencies. "Don't go out for any reason," I instructed her. "Don't contact anyone but me." At the apartment door, Zoe hugged me tightly. "I'm so scared," she confessed. "Me too," I admitted, "but my anger is stronger than my fear." When she left in the cab, I took a deep breath and looked at myself one last time in the mirror. Now it was Zoe looking back at me. I grabbed her keys, ID, and purse. It was time to enter the Wolf's Den in Lincoln Park. I had the cab drop me off 2 blocks from the house in the luxurious Chicago neighborhood. I didn't want the driver to see exactly where I was going. The rain had stopped, but the air was still heavy and humid, just like my chest. As I walked, I forced myself to adopt Zoe's posture, slumped shoulders, head down, hesitant steps. Turning the corner, I saw the mansion, a monster of concrete and glass hidden behind high walls with security cameras. My sister's prison. The security guard at the gate recognized me immediately, or rather, he recognized Zoe. He opened the gate with an indifferent nod. I noticed he barely looked at my bruised face. He was used to seeing Zoe in this state. The garden was immaculate, as cold as a magazine photo. Nothing out of place. At the front door, I took a deep breath before using the key. The house was silent, except for the low sound of a television coming from somewhere. The air conditioning was so high it gave me chills. I followed the sound until I found him. Julian, sitting on the living room sofa, fiddling with a tablet. He didn't look up when I came in. He was wearing expensive casual clothes, his hair perfectly styled. Nothing in his appearance suggested the monster I knew he was. "Done with your walk?" he asked in a cold voice, not looking at me. I swallowed hard. My first trial by fire. "Yes," I whispered, mimicking the submissive tone Zoe had coached me on. Only then did he look up, scanning me from head to toe with empty eyes. There was no remorse there, only irritation, as if I were a broken object he was forced to deal with. "Look at you," he said, putting down the tablet. "Pathetic." He stood up and walked over. It took all my willpower not to step back, not to punch him in the face right then and there. I kept my eyes fixed on the floor, just as Zoe would. He grabbed my chin forcefully and examined the bruises he had caused. "This is going to leave a mark if it's not treated," he commented nonchalantly, as if talking about the weather. "Go take a shower and pull yourself together." He let go of my chin with a gentle push, turning back to his tablet. I stood there, feeling the rage boil inside me, almost overflowing. "Oh dear Zoe, where have you been?" A voice as sweet as poison came from the kitchen. It was Eleanor, Julian's mother, thin, elegant, impeccably dressed and made up, the kind of woman who appears in charity events in society columns. Her eyes, however, were cold and calculating as they scanned my injuries. "Just a walk," Julian answered for me, to cool her head after our disagreement. Eleanor smiled, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Come, dear, you must be hungry." Reluctantly, I followed her to the luxurious kitchen. A steaming cup of tea was already prepared on the counter. "Drink this," she said, pushing the cup in my direction. "It will calm you down." I looked at the liquid. It had a sweet smell, but with a slight bitterness. The infamous tea Zoe had mentioned. I brought the cup to my lips, but at the last second, I faked a cough and accidentally spilled the liquid on the counter. "I'm so sorry," I exclaimed, feigning desperation. "My hands, they're trembling." I saw a flash of fury in Eleanor's eyes, quickly masked by a forced smile. "No problem, dear. Maria will clean it up. You should rest." I nodded, grateful for the escape. "Yes, I'm very tired. I'm going to lie down." I went up the stairs towards the room Zoe had described, the smaller guest room, her designated prison. I locked the door as soon as I entered, finally letting my mask fall. The room was impersonal and cold. A single bed, a small dresser, a single window overlooking the wall. No photos, no personal touches. It was a prison cell, not a home. I sat on the edge of the bed, trying to process what I had just experienced. Julian's casual contempt, Eleanor's silent control, the naturalness with which they treated the violence. It was as if I had entered a parallel universe where cruelty and manipulation were the norm. Hearing footsteps in the hallway, I crept silently to the door. Whispered voices reached me. "She spilled the tea," Eleanor's voice said, now without any sweetness. "On purpose, I'm sure." "She's not smart enough for that," Julian replied. "She's just clumsy. The dose needs to be increased. She's becoming resistant. Do what you have to do. I just need her to be manageable until next week's meeting." "Don't worry," Eleanor chuckled softly. "By the time the will is read, your dear wife won't even be able to say her own name." The footsteps moved away. I stood frozen, my blood running cold. A will. They were planning to drug Zoe into a state of incapacitation, probably to manipulate some inheritance. This explained everything. The refusal to divorce, the mysterious documents, the nightly teas. I needed to find out more, but first I had to survive in this house. I searched the room for safe hiding places. I found a loose floorboard under the rug, near the head of the bed, perfect for hiding the phone I had brought. In the following days, I fell into a carefully orchestrated routine. In the morning, I'd make Julian's coffee. Black, no sugar, just as Zoe had instructed. Then I'd avoid Eleanor and her home remedies, dumping them when I could or pretending to take them. To keep up the charade, I began to act progressively more confused and lethargic. I'd stumble into furniture, forget words mid-sentence, and stare blankly into space. Each little episode was met with discreet smiles of satisfaction from Eleanor. What they didn't know was that while they thought I was drugged up in my room, I was actually studying the house, memorizing routines, looking for openings. Eleanor went out every afternoon for social engagements. Julian spent the whole day out, only returning late at night. The housekeeper, Maria, worked efficiently, but always kept her distance, as if afraid to get involved. On Friday, 4 days after my arrival, I got my first real chance. Eleanor had left for a charity luncheon. Maria was busy in the basement. The house was completely empty. It was my chance to get into Julian's office, the one room that was always locked. The door was sophisticated with a fingerprint scanner and a numeric keypad. Impossible to force. I studied the system, trying to find a flaw. There wasn't one. I needed the code or Julian's fingerprints, and I had access to neither. Frustrated, I turned to examine the rest of the hallway. That's when I noticed something. A small desk next to the office door, probably used for quick notes. On it, a desk calendar. I picked it up carefully. On the page for the following week, a date was circled in red, Thursday. Next to it, handwritten, will reading. 10 a.m. So that was it. They had exactly 1 week to make Zoe completely incapacitated, in time for this mysterious will reading. My heart pounded as I heard the sound of a car pulling into the garage. Quickly, I put the calendar back in its place and ran to my room, pretending to be asleep when Eleanor returned. That night, I waited until the house was silent. I retrieved the phone from its hiding place and sent a coded message to Zoe. Need info on Julian's family, anything about wills or inheritances. The reply came almost immediately. His grandfather died 3 months ago. He was very rich, owned the company. Julian and his mom never got along with him. The old man liked me, said I was a breath of fresh air in that toxic family. The pieces were starting to fit together. The grandfather had died recently. There must be an inheritance involved. But what was the connection to Zoe? Did he give you anything? I asked. Documents? Gifts? Anything? Not that I remember, but he used to say I was the family's salvation. I never understood what he meant by that. We hung up with the promise of another contact soon. I put the phone away and lay in bed, my mind racing. The plan was to drug Zoe into incapacity before the will reading. That meant that somehow she was tied to the family's inheritance. The old man. The next day, I decided to risk it all. I needed more information. And there was only one place I could find it. The locked office. If I couldn't force the door, I needed to make Julian open it in front of me. While he and Eleanor were having breakfast, I took a glass of orange juice and went quietly upstairs. I stopped in front of the office door. I took a deep breath, praying my plan would work. I deliberately tripped. The glass slipped from my hands, shattering on the marble floor. Juice splattered everywhere. On the floor, on the walls, and most importantly, on the door's security panel. I fell to the floor and started crying hysterically. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry," I cried out. "I'm dizzy. I didn't mean to." The sound of heavy footsteps coming up the stairs was almost immediate. Julian appeared in the hallway, his face contorted with rage. "You idiot," he shouted. "Look what you've done." His eyes scanned the sticky mess, focusing with horror on the security panel now covered in orange juice. "Do you know how much this system costs?" he growled, pushing me aside. He grabbed a cloth from the hall closet and began frantically wiping the panel. "I need to check if it still works," he muttered. This was the moment. I kept my head down, pretending to be terrified, but my eyes were fixed on Julian's hands as he typed in the code. 6 digits. 240682. I memorized them instantly. The green light flashed. The door clicked open. Julian sighed in relief, quickly locking the door again. Then he turned to me, still on the floor among the shards of glass. "Clean up this mess," he ordered. "And if I find you near this door again, I'll break your other arm." I nodded quickly, still feigning terror. But inside, I was ecstatic. I had the code. Now I just needed to wait for the next opportunity. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. That same night during dinner, Julian's phone rang. His expression quickly changed from irritation to concern as he listened to the person on the other end. "What do you mean there's a leak at the plant?" he boomed. "This couldn't happen today of all days." After hanging up, he stood up abruptly. "I need to go to the factory in Gary. It seems we have a serious problem that could compromise tomorrow's shipment." Eleanor frowned. "How long will you be?" "I don't know," he replied, grabbing his coat. "It could be all night." "Keep her under control," he added, glancing quickly at me. Eleanor nodded with a sinister smile. "Don't worry. I guarantee she won't cause any trouble." As soon as Julian left, Eleanor turned to me with a cup of tea already prepared. "Drink this, dear. It will help you rest." I looked at the liquid, weighing my options. I couldn't refuse. That would raise suspicion. I couldn't spill it again either. Eleanor was watching my every move with almost predatory attention. I brought the cup to my lips. At the last second, I swallowed air instead of the liquid, keeping my mouth tightly shut. I made swallowing sounds and took several sips until the cup was empty. Eleanor smiled, satisfied. "Good girl. Now go to your room. I have to go out for an urgent meeting, but I'll be back in a few hours." This was unexpected. Eleanor never went out at night. Maybe the problem at the company was more serious than it seemed. I nodded meekly and went up to my room. I locked the door and ran to the window, watching as Eleanor's car left the property. Maria had already left hours ago. The house was completely empty. I waited 15 minutes, making sure Eleanor wouldn't come back for something she forgot. Then I left my room and walked silently to the office. My hands trembled as I typed in the code. 240682, green light. The door swung open. The office was exactly as I'd imagined. Masculine, organized, and cold. Dark wood furniture, shelves full of books that had probably never been read. A large abstract painting behind the main desk. I started searching. The desk drawers were locked. The computer files, password protected. I searched shelves, cabinets, anywhere important documents might be hidden. That's when I noticed something odd about the painting behind the desk. It was slightly crooked, as if it had been moved recently. I approached and gently pulled on one of the corners. The painting slid to the side, revealing a safe embedded in the wall. My heart raced. This was where the secrets were. But there was another problem. The safe had its own numeric keypad. I tried the same code as the door. Red light. I tried Julian's birth date, which Zoe had given me. Red light again. Desperate, I tried other combinations. Their wedding date, Eleanor's anniversary, anything that might make sense. Nothing worked. Time was ticking, and at any moment, Eleanor or Julian could return. I thought about the grandfather's words to Zoe. "You are the family's salvation." An idea came to me. What if the code was related to Zoe? With trembling fingers, I typed in her birth date, which was also mine, 150988, 6 digits, green light. The safe opened. Inside was just one thick folder and a sealed envelope with Zoe's name written on it by hand. I grabbed the folder first. My eyes scanned the pages quickly, absorbing every word. It was the will of Julian's grandfather, Mr. Arthur Vance, and what I read left me stunned. The old man had left some assets to Julian and Eleanor, a house, bank accounts, personal items, but the real treasure. 80% of the shares in the multi-million-dollar company he founded had been left to Zoe, not to Julian, to my sister. I kept reading, looking for the catch, and I found it in a small clause at the end. If, on the occasion of the official reading of the will, it is proven through medical evaluation that Zoe is mentally incapable of managing her own assets, The legal and administrative guardianship of the shares will be automatically transferred to her husband, Julian. The truth hit me like a punch to the gut. Julian and Eleanor weren't just abusing Zoe, they were systematically drugging her to induce a state of mental incapacity. At the will reading, they would present fake medical reports proving her insanity and take control of the fortune that legally belonged to her. I took the envelope with Zoe's name on it. Inside was a handwritten letter from the grandfather. My dearest Zoe, if you are reading this, it means you found my secret safe and may be in danger. Forgive me for putting you in this situation, but you were the only one I trusted. I left the bulk of my assets to you because I saw your kindness and integrity, qualities my grandson and daughter-in-law lack. I hoped you would use this power to reform the company and the family. I knew they would try to stop you, which is why I included the mental incapacity clause. Not to harm you, but as a trap. My true lawyer and friend, Mr. Harrison, has copies of all the evidence of fraud and embezzlement that Julian and Eleanor have committed over the years. If you are in danger, find Mr. Harrison immediately. Show him this letter. He will know what to do. With affection and hope, Arthur. Quickly, I took out my phone and photographed every page of the will and the letter. I put everything back in the safe. I closed it and put the painting back in its original position. I was leaving the office when I heard the sound of a car pulling into the garage. I froze. Someone had come back early. I locked the office door and ran to my room, throwing myself onto the bed seconds before I heard footsteps on the stairs. Eleanor had returned. I pretended to be asleep when she opened the door to check on me. Apparently satisfied to see me lying still, she closed the door again. As soon as the footsteps faded, I grabbed my phone. I needed to contact Zoe immediately and tell her everything I had discovered. But before I could send any message, I heard Eleanor's voice from the other side of the door. "Zoe, are you awake? I need you to take your nightly medicine." I quickly hid the phone under my pillow and pretended to wake up slowly as Eleanor entered the room. She was carrying another cup of tea. "Drink it all, dear. You've been so agitated lately." This time, there was no way out. Eleanor stood by the bed, watching me intently. I took the cup with trembling hands. The liquid smelled stronger than usual. They had increased the dose. I don't feel well," I mumbled, buying time. I needed to think fast. The cup was in my hands, and Eleanor wasn't looking away. There was no way to spill or avoid the liquid this time. I raised the cup slowly, gaining precious seconds. I could smell the bitter, heavy scent of the concentrated medication. If I drank this, I would be completely incapacitated exactly as they wanted. "Eleanor," a voice called from the doorway. It was Maria, the housekeeper, who had suddenly appeared. "Phone for you. It's the doctor. He says it's urgent." Eleanor's face tightened in irritation. "Not now, Maria. I'm busy." He insisted, "Ma'am." He said it's about the papers for tomorrow. Eleanor hesitated, clearly torn between taking the important call and making sure I drank the concoction. Finally, she sighed. "Drink it all, Zoe. I'll be back to get the empty cup." As soon as she left, I acted quickly. I ran to the adjoining bathroom and emptied the liquid into the toilet. I returned to the bed with the empty cup, pretending to be increasingly drowsy. When Eleanor returned minutes later, she found me, seemingly semi-conscious, the empty cup on the nightstand. She smiled with satisfaction. "Perfect," she whispered, closing the door. I waited until the house was completely silent. Around midnight, I took out my phone and contacted Zoe. I found out everything, I wrote hastily. "Grandpa left the company to you, not Julian. They're drugging you to declare you incompetent at the will reading and take legal control of everything," Zoe replied almost immediately. "Oh my God. But why? Why would he do that? He trusted you, not them. He wrote that he wanted you to reform the company. He mentioned a lawyer, Mr. Harrison, who has proof of fraud committed by Julian and Eleanor. I sent all the photos I had taken. The will, the letter, the documents. This was our ammunition against them." "What do I do?" Zoe asked. "Tomorrow. Find this Mr. Harrison. Show him everything. In the meantime, I'll keep playing the part. The official will reading is in 3 days. We need to be ready." The next day, following my lead, Eleanor increased the medication in all my meals. I watched her satisfaction as I pretended to be more and more disoriented, stumbling into furniture, forgetting words mid-sentence, and staring into space for long periods. Julian returned from the factory at dawn. During breakfast, Eleanor updated him on my progress. "She's almost there," she murmured as I pretended not to hear. "By Thursday, she won't even be able to say her own name." Julian nodded, not hiding his satisfaction. "Excellent. The papers are ready. Dr. Reed will sign the medical report tomorrow." It was just after 9 at night when the phone vibrated under my pillow. It was Zoe. "I found Mr. Harrison. I showed him everything. He already suspected something, but he didn't have enough proof to act. Now he does. We're getting everything ready for the will reading." A wave of relief washed over me. We were close to ending this nightmare. On Wednesday, the eve of the will reading, Eleanor was more on edge than ever. She paced around the house, checking documents, talking on the phone in hushed tones, and preparing more remedies than usual. That night, she brought a double dose of the liquid. "Tomorrow is a big day, Zoe," she said sweetly. "I want to make sure you'll be comfortable." Again, I found myself cornered. Eleanor refused to leave the room until I drank the entire contents. With my heart pounding, I brought the cup to my lips. That's when I had an idea. Suddenly, my body went rigid. I let my eyes drift over Eleanor's shoulder, fixing on an empty spot on the wall. "No," I murmured, my voice trembling. "He's here again." Eleanor frowned. "Who's here?" The man in the wall. "He's telling me not to trust you." Eleanor's face paled. She looked behind her instinctively. Then she turned back to me with a mixture of irritation and triumph. "There's no one there, Zoe. You're hallucinating." "His eyes," I muttered, letting fake tears stream down my face. "They're like snakes. Why are his eyes changing shape?" Eleanor's exasperation was palpable. "Enough of this nonsense. Drink the medicine now." As she moved to force the liquid into my mouth, I acted on pure instinct. I let out a sharp, terrified scream and threw the cup against the wall. The liquid splattered all over the expensive wallpaper and Eleanor's silk dress. "You lunatic!" she shrieked, looking in horror at the stain on her clothes. I collapsed to the floor, hugging my knees, rocking back and forth as I muttered incoherently, "Snake eyes, snake eyes." Eleanor stared at me, breathing heavily. Then slowly a malevolent smile formed on her lips. "Perfect," she whispered. "Absolutely perfect." She pulled me up by the arm, dragging me back to the bed. "You'll stay here until tomorrow morning," she said coldly. "No more trouble." I heard the key turn in the lock as she left. I was trapped. I ran to the door, trying to open it, but it was useless. Eleanor had locked me in the room. The irony of the situation hit me. I had given them exactly what they wanted, a public display of madness to convince anyone at the will reading that I was truly insane. I grabbed my phone. "I'm locked in the room," I wrote to Zoe. Eleanor saw my psychotic break. "They'll use it as proof tomorrow. Don't worry," Zoe replied. "Mr. Harrison has a plan. Be ready at 9 a.m. The next morning, Eleanor and Julian entered the room, both dressed formally. Julian wore an expensive Italian suit. Eleanor an elegant blazer and skirt set. "Time to go, dear," Eleanor said with fake sweetness. Julian roughly pulled me out of bed. "Behave today," he ordered in a low voice. "Just sit there and be quiet." I let them guide me to the car. I sat in the back seat between Julian and Eleanor, like a prisoner being escorted. I stared out the window as we crossed the city. The destination was an imposing building in Chicago's financial district, the law office where the will reading would take place. Julian's lawyer, a middle-aged man with a predatory smile, greeted us in the conference room. Also present were a man who looked like a doctor. It must be Dr. Reed, responsible for the fake reports, and a notary. They sat me between Julian and Eleanor. I kept my head down, pretending to be completely disoriented. "Good morning, everyone," the lawyer began. "We are here for the official reading of the last will and testament of the late Arthur Vance concerning the distribution of his shares in Vance Imports." He cleared his throat. "According to the document we have in hand, the primary heir designated for 80% of the company's shares is Mrs. Zoe, wife of Mr. Julian." Julian nodded, as if he already knew what was coming next. However, the lawyer continued, "We have been informed that Mrs. Zoe is currently under a condition that would make her unable to manage such assets. Dr. Reed, could you please present your report?" The doctor stood up, nervously adjusting his glasses. "Yes, I have been treating Mrs. Zoe for the past few months. Unfortunately, she presents a severe case of mental instability, with episodes of paranoia, hallucinations, and erratic behavior. Just yesterday, she had a severe psychotic break." He placed a document on the table. "This is the official report declaring Mrs. Zoe legally incapable of managing any assets or making legal decisions in her own name." The lawyer took the document, nodding gravely. "Given these circumstances, and in accordance with the specific clause in the will, the legal administration of all assets designated to Mrs. Zoe will be automatically transferred to her husband, Mr. Julian." Eleanor patted my hand, her face a mask of false concern. "Don't worry, dear. We'll take care of everything for you." The lawyer raised his pen, ready to formalize the document. "If there are no objections, I object." The strong, clear voice came from the doorway. Everyone turned. An elderly man with white hair and an imposing posture entered the room. Beside him stood Zoe, my sister, my twin, standing in her full, restored strength, with no sign of fear in her eyes. The shock in the room was instant. Dr. Reed dropped his pen. Julian's lawyer stood up abruptly. Julian and Eleanor froze in their chairs, the blood draining from their faces, as their gazes jumped between Zoe at the door and me, sitting at the table. "Who?" the confused lawyer began. "I am Mr. Harrison," the elderly man said, "personal attorney and executor of the estate of Mr. Arthur Vance. And this," he gestured to Zoe, "is the real Zoe Vance." He took a step forward. "The woman you brought here today is Chloe, her twin sister. The woman you have held captive, drugged, and abused for the past few days is not your wife, Mr. Julian." Chaos erupted in the room. Julian shot up, knocking over his chair. "This is absurd," he yelled. "A fraud! How dare you interrupt a legal proceeding? Security!" Mr. Harrison remained unperturbed. "The only fraud here, Mr. Julian, is the one you and your mother attempted to perpetrate." While they argued, Zoe walked over to where I was sitting and placed a hand on my shoulder. The contact, the first in days, filled my eyes with tears. We were together again. "I'm tired of these accusations," Julian said, trying to regain control. "These two women are clearly conspiring to steal what is legally mine. Zoe has a history of mental instability. I have documents, reports, which are forged," Mr. Harrison interrupted, placing a laptop on the table and connecting it to a projector on the wall. "Perhaps Mr. Vance would like to explain this." The screen lit up. The first images were photos of the medication vials I had found in Eleanor's room. These are powerful antipsychotics, illegally prescribed in Zoe's name, but which were never prescribed by any legitimate doctor, Mr. Harrison explained. Substances that, when administered continuously and in increasing doses, as you did, would cause exactly the symptoms Dr. Reed described in his fraudulent report. Dr. Reed turned pale, backing towards the door. A security guard blocked his exit. "And this," Mr. Harrison continued, showing the original will on the screen, "is the authentic and legal document that leaves 80% of the company's shares to Zoe, with no other condition than the recognition of her mental sanity, which was never in question until you started drugging her." Eleanor, who had been paralyzed until now, tried to speak. These accusations are absurd. We were only protecting Zoe from herself. She's been confused, paranoid. Because of the drugs you put in my tea every night, Zoe said, her voice firm. Did you think I didn't notice? I just didn't have the proof or the strength to fight. Julian's lawyer was discreetly trying to gather his papers, clearly wanting to distance himself from the case. Mr. Harrison stopped him with a gesture. No one is leaving this room, he declared. The police are already on their way. As if on cue, the door opened again, and 2 uniformed officers entered, accompanied by a man in a plain suit who flashed a badge. Detective Miller, Chicago PD, he announced. Mr. Julian Vance and Mrs. Eleanor Vance, you are under arrest on charges of fraud, attempted embezzlement, illegal administration of controlled substances, and domestic violence. As the officers approached with handcuffs, Julian exploded. This is a setup, he screamed, lunging towards Zoe. You manipulative bitch! You planned this all along. Instinctively, I stood up and got between them. Julian's eyes widened as he saw 2 identical women facing him without fear. Stay away from my sister, I said, my voice low and dangerous. The detective grabbed Julian's arm. Add attempted assault to the list. As the police handcuffed Julian, he continued to scream threats. You don't know who you're messing with. I have connections. I'll destroy you both. Eleanor, on the other hand, seemed to have collapsed. Her face, once haughty and controlled, now showed every one of her years. She didn't resist as she was cuffed. What happened to you, Mother? Julian muttered, watching her being led away. Fight! Don't let them win. But Eleanor just shook her head, defeated. Dr. Reed was the next to be arrested, accused of falsifying medical documents and misuse of his professional license. I was just following orders, he stammered as he was taken away. I never meant to hurt anyone. In less than 10 minutes, the room that had been the stage for a near tragedy was almost empty. Only Zoe, me, Mr. Harrison, and the notary, who had witnessed everything with wide eyes, remained. Mr. Harrison smiled for the first time. Ms. Vance, as the legitimate lawyer and executor of your late father-in-law's will, I have the honor of confirming that you are now the legal owner of 80% of the shares of Vance Imports, as per Mr. Arthur's wishes. Zoe didn't respond immediately. Instead, she came over and hugged me, a tight, desperate hug, full of gratitude and relief. Thank you, she whispered in my ear, her voice thick with emotion. You risked everything for me. I hugged her back, feeling the tears burn my eyes. Always. You would have done the same for me. Later, after all the documents were duly signed and Mr. Harrison had left to finalize the legal procedures, Zoe and I found ourselves alone in the conference room. How did you manage to organize all this? I asked, still amazed at the perfection of the plan. Zoe smiled, a smile I hadn't seen in a long time, full of confidence and strength. As soon as I sent the photos to Mr. Harrison, he gathered the evidence he already had against Julian and Eleanor. Apparently, old Arthur suspected them for years and had been discreetly collecting proof of fraud and embezzlement in the company. So that's why he left everything to you, I concluded. He knew Julian and Eleanor would try to manipulate you in some way. Exactly. Mr. Harrison said the old man was smarter than he looked. He included that clause about mental incapacity precisely to lure Julian and Eleanor into a trap. Zoe shook her head, impressed. He predicted exactly what they would do. And now? What's going to happen with the company? Zoe looked out the window at the city skyline. I'm going to do exactly what Arthur hoped. Reform it. Clean up the corruption, the unethical practices, the shady deals Julian was conducting. Are you sure you want that responsibility after everything you've been through? She turned to me, her gaze determined. I want to turn Arthur's legacy into something positive, something that helps people instead of exploiting them. She paused. And I want you to help me. Me? But I don't know anything about business. Not with the management, Zoe clarified. but the company needs a new image. Who better than my talented illustrator sister to create that? I laughed, surprised by the proposal. I think I can come up with a few ideas. 3 months later, Vance Imports had been transformed. Under Zoe's leadership, the company abandoned unethical practices, established social responsibility programs, and completely rebranded its image. With my help, of course. As for Julian and Eleanor, they faced trial on multiple charges. The evidence was overwhelming. Dr. Reed had confessed everything in exchange for a reduced sentence, exposing in detail how they had planned to incapacitate Zoe to take control of the inheritance. The house where Zoe had been held prisoner was sold. With part of the money, we founded a support center for victims of domestic violence in Detroit, a place where women like Zoe could find safety, legal and psychological support. On a sunny afternoon, we visited the cemetery where Arthur Vance was buried. Zoe placed flowers on the gravestone. "Thank you," she said simply, "for trusting me when no one else did." As we walked back to the car, Zoe linked her arm in mine. "You know what impresses me most about this whole story?" "What?" "How that clever old man managed to see beyond appearances. He saw who Julian and Eleanor really were, despite the perfect facade. And he saw who I was, despite my apparent fragility." I smiled. "I think we all have layers that people rarely see." "Even you," Zoe said. "Who would have thought my quiet illustrator sister would be capable of infiltrating an abuser's house, facing down dangerous people, and dismantling a criminal plot?" I shrugged, feeling strangely embarrassed by the compliment. I did what anyone would do for someone they love. Zoe stopped, holding my hands. "No, Chloe, not everyone would have that courage. You literally took my place in hell to save me." I looked at her. My twin, my reflection, my other half. So alike on the outside, so different on the inside. Or maybe not so different after all. "Who would have thought," I murmured, "that we'd need to become each other to find out who we really are?" 6 months after that fateful day in the law office, both my life and Zoe's had completely transformed. The truth about Julian and Eleanor Vance had become a national scandal. The trial, widely covered by the media, exposed not only the plot to defraud the will, but also a web of corruption, bribery, and money laundering that spanned years. Julian was sentenced to 12 years in prison for multiple crimes. Eleanor received an 8-year sentence. Dr. Reed permanently lost his medical license and received 5 years on a work release program. As for Vance Imports, it flourished under Zoe's leadership. She proved to be a natural-born entrepreneur with a vision and compassion that her late father-in-law had clearly recognized. As promised, I became responsible for the company's new visual identity, creating a logo and materials that reflected the new values of transparency and social responsibility. On that spring afternoon, we were at the inauguration of the new Dawn Center, the shelter and support center for victims of domestic violence we had founded with part of the company's profits. The building, painted in soft shades of blue and green, was in a quiet area of Detroit, its address kept secret to protect the women who sought refuge there. Zoe was on the small makeshift stage, addressing an audience of officials, press, and supporters. She wore a light-colored suit that contrasted with my patterned dress. We now made a point of dressing differently, as if we needed to reaffirm our unique identities after everything that had happened. "I'm not here today as a company executive," Zoe began, her voice firm and confident, so different from the broken woman who had arrived at my apartment that rainy night. "I'm here as a survivor. Someone who knows what it feels like to be trapped, powerless, with no way out." She paused, her eyes finding mine in the audience. "But I also know what it's like to have someone willing to risk everything to save me. My sister Chloe literally took my place in hell to protect me." She smiled at me. "Not everyone has a twin sister to infiltrate their life. That's why we created this place, to be the support that many women don't have." After the speech and the symbolic ribbon cutting, while guests circulated through the new center, I found Zoe in a quiet moment, looking out the window at the trees in the newly planted garden. "What are you thinking about?" I asked, stopping beside her. "About how life can completely change in such a short time," she replied. "A year ago, I was a prisoner in my own home, dying a little bit each day. Now you're a powerful businesswoman, philanthropist, and an inspiration to abuse victims across the country," I completed with a smile. Zoe chuckled softly. "That wasn't exactly what I had in mind when I married Julian. I always thought I would just be someone's wife." "Maybe that's why old Arthur saw something special in you," I suggested. "He saw past the surface. He saw the potential that even you didn't know you had. Just like you," Zoe said, turning to face me. "You always believed in me, even when I had given up on myself." I was silent for a moment, reflecting on everything we had been through. "You know what the scariest part of impersonating you in that house was?" I said, finally. "It was realizing how easy it is to lose yourself. After just a few days of pretending to be you, I started to feel truly diminished, scared, controlled. The force of that toxic environment is like quicksand." Zoe nodded slowly. "That's why so many women can't get out. It's not weakness. It's like being gradually suffocated until you believe there's no air anywhere else." "But you got out," I reminded her. "You found the strength to run that night." "Only because I had somewhere to go," Zoe replied, squeezing my hand. "I had you." We were interrupted by one of the center's coordinators, who came to introduce us to a young woman. She looked to be in her early 20s with visible marks of recent aggression on her face, a yellowish bruise on her chin, her lip still in the process of healing. "This is Leah," the coordinator introduced her. "She heard about the inauguration in the newspaper and came here today. She's looking for help to get out of a difficult situation." Leah's gaze was one I knew well, that mix of fear, shame, and a last glimmer of hope. The same look I saw in Zoe's eyes that night. Zoe approached her gently. "Hello, Leah. I'm so glad you came." The girl looked down. "I don't know if I should be here. He says he'll find me wherever I go." "They always say that," Zoe replied softly. "It's one of the ways they maintain control. My family doesn't understand. They think you just leave, and that's it. But it's not that simple." Leah's voice broke. Zoe nodded. "We understand. We all understand here." As Zoe led Leah to a private conversation with the team of social workers and lawyers, I watched them walk away. The way Zoe spoke to the girl with genuine empathy, without judgment, showed how much she had grown. Later, after the guests had left and we were helping to tidy up the space, Zoe found me again. "Leah is staying with us," she announced. "We're going to help her with protection orders, psychological support, and rebuilding her life." "That's wonderful," I replied. "How is she?" "Scared but determined. You know what the hardest part was for her?" "What?" "Believing she deserves something better." Zoe smiled sadly. "That's always the hardest part." We sat in the garden, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink. The symbol of the new Dawn Center, a rising sun drawn by me, glowed softly at the entrance of the building. "When you decided to impersonate me," Zoe said thoughtfully, "were you ever scared?" I hesitated before answering. I was, many times. But what scared me wasn't Julian or Eleanor. It was the possibility of failing, of not being able to help you in time. "I can't imagine the courage it took," she murmured, "to willingly walk into that situation." "It wasn't courage," I corrected. "It was love and rage. A lot of rage." Zoe laughed. "A powerful combination. The most powerful there is." We were silent for a few minutes, each lost in our own thoughts. The sun finally disappeared below the horizon, leaving only a soft glow in the sky. "You know what's funny?" Zoe said finally. "Our whole lives, people confused us all the time. It was always a joke between us. And then we used it to our advantage," I completed. "Exactly. What was always just a genetic curiosity became our greatest weapon." "Well, I hope we never have to use that weapon again," I replied, getting up. I'd rather we each just stick to being exactly who we are. And who are we now? Zoe asked, also getting up. After all this? I thought for a moment, looking at the building we had created, the lights that were beginning to turn on inside it, lights that meant safety and hope for women like Leah. We are who we were always meant to be, I answered finally, stronger versions of ourselves, versions that know exactly what they're capable of. Zoe smiled. I like that answer. Zoe linked her arm in mine as we walked back to the building. Night was falling, but there was something different in the air, a sense of possibility that didn't exist before. Are you coming to the meeting with the investors tomorrow? She asked. Of course, I replied. I have some ideas for the social responsibility campaign I want to show you first. Our new routine was comfortable, productive. We worked together at the company, though in different roles. Zoe in management and strategy, me in creation and communication. We were an unbeatable team, as we used to say, laughing. 2 days later, as we were reviewing documents in her new office at the headquarters of Vance Imports, now renamed Aurora International Trade, we received surprising news. Julian attempted suicide in prison, said Mr. Harrison, who had become our permanent lawyer and advisor. I felt the weight of those words. Despite everything Julian had done, I couldn't feel satisfaction in his suffering. Zoe was silent for a long moment. Is he going to survive? Yes. He was found in time, but he's asked to speak with you. I looked at my sister, worried. You don't have to go. Zoe took a deep breath. No, I do. I need to close this chapter for good. The following week, I accompanied Zoe to the penitentiary hospital. Although she insisted on going in alone to talk to Julian, I waited in the hallway ready to intervene if necessary. When she came out, almost an hour later, her face was serene, almost peaceful. Did he want to apologize? I asked skeptically as we walked to the parking lot. Not exactly, Zoe replied. He wanted to understand how we were able to trick him. His ego still can't accept defeat. And what did you say? The truth, that he was so busy seeing me as an object that he never really looked at me as a person. That's why it was so easy for someone else to replace me. She paused. I also said I forgave him. I stopped, surprised. You forgave him? After everything? Zoe faced me with serenity. I didn't forgive him for his sake, Chloe. I forgave him for mine. Carrying that hatred was like still being trapped in that house, in that life. I needed to completely free myself. I felt a lump in my throat. My sister had found a strength I was still struggling to reach. And Eleanor? I asked. Did you see her too? Zoe shook her head. She refused to speak with me. Mr. Harrison said she's completely shut down, refuses psychological treatment. It seems she's lost the will to live. That's sad, I commented, surprising myself with the sincerity of the feeling. In the end, they lost everything. Money, power, freedom, even their dignity. And why? For greed. For not being able to accept that someone other than them deserved something. Zoe looked up at the now darkening sky. What a waste of a life. 6 months later, the new Dawn Center had already welcomed more than 50 women and their children. Leah, the first to seek help on the day of the inauguration, now worked with us as a volunteer, helping other women find the same path to freedom she had walked. Our social reintegration program, which offered professional training and employment opportunities for survivors of domestic violence, was gaining national attention. Zoe had been invited to speak at conferences on the topic, becoming an important voice in the fight against abuse. As for me, besides my work at the company and the center, I returned to my art. Creating was no longer just a profession, but became a form of therapy, a way to process everything we had been through. It was on an ordinary afternoon while working in my home studio that I received an unexpected call. It was Zoe, her voice strangely tense. Chloe, can you come to my place now? I received a letter. Something strange is happening. 20 minutes later, I walked into Zoe's new apartment in Chicago, a bright and airy place, so different from the gloomy mansion where she had lived with Julian. "What happened?" I asked, finding her sitting at the kitchen table, an open envelope in front of her. "This arrived today," she said, pushing a paper in my direction. "It's from Julian's grandfather." I frowned, confused. The grandfather? But he passed away almost a year ago. It was to be delivered on this specific date in case certain conditions were met. Zoe watched as I read the letter. The message was astonishing. Arthur Vance had left additional instructions to be revealed only if Zoe took control of the company and transformed it positively within a year. Exactly what had happened. "There's a house in the country," I read aloud, "a property no one knew about. He says there are more documents there, proof of other crimes that Julian and Eleanor committed, people they hurt." Zoe nodded slowly. "Mr. Harrison verified it. The property exists. It's registered in the name of a foundation created by the grandfather. No one but him knew about it. Are you going there?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "I have to. If there are more victims, they deserve justice." She hesitated. "Would you come with me this weekend?" The property was 4 hours from the city, in a mountainous and isolated region of West Virginia. We drove in silence for most of the way, each lost in our own thoughts. "It's strange," Zoe finally commented as we climbed a winding road. "It's as if old Arthur planned all this, every step, even after his death. He seemed to have a rather particular sense of justice," I replied, as if he were playing chess with everyone around him. "I'm not sure if that comforts me or scares me," Zoe murmured. The house was a modest stone construction, hidden among ancient trees. It seemed to have been built to go unnoticed, almost invisible in the landscape. Mr. Harrison had given us the key and the alarm code. Inside, there was nothing extraordinary. Simple furniture, a small library, a fireplace, except for a room in the back, carefully locked. "This must be it," Zoe said, inserting the key that had come with the letter. The room was a small office with a single central table. On it, a metal box and another envelope with Zoe's name. With slightly trembling hands, she opened the envelope and read aloud. "My dear Zoe, if you are reading this, it means you succeeded where many failed. You managed not only to survive their greed, but to transform it into something greater than yourself. What you will find in this box is not just about Julian and Eleanor, it's about an entire system. Powerful people who used my company as a tool for their own dark ends. Politicians, judges, businessmen. For years, I was an accomplice by omission. Too late, I realized that my silence cost lives. My cowardice allowed my son and then my grandson to continue this chain of destruction. You are different. I saw it the moment I met you. There is a strength in you that you may not even know you have yet. A strength that comes not from power over others, but from your humanity. What you do with this information is your choice. Revealing everything will mean danger. These people will not fall easily. Destroying everything might be safer for you. Whatever your decision, know that I believe in you, more than I ever believed in my own blood. Arthur." Zoe dropped the letter on the table, her expression unreadable. "What's in the box?" I asked softly. She turned the small digital dial, entering her birthday, the same code we had used on Julian's safe. The lid opened with a metallic click. Inside were external hard drives, documents organized in folders, photographs, and recordings. A complete and meticulous archive of decades of corruption, money laundering, and crimes that extended far beyond Julian and Eleanor. "Oh my God," I murmured as we leafed through the material. "This is explosive." Zoe remained silent, examining the documents with an intensity that worried me. "What are you going to do?" I finally asked. She looked up, her gaze meeting mine. "What would you do, Chloe?" The question took me by surprise. "Me? I don't know. It's a huge and dangerous responsibility." Just like he said. "Yes," Zoe agreed. "These people have power. They can destroy us if they find out we have this. Or we can destroy them first," I suggested, surprising myself with the audacity. A faint smile appeared on Zoe's face. Exactly what I was thinking. That night, staying in a small hotel in the nearest town, we laid out our plan. It wouldn't be a frontal assault. It would be meticulous, strategic, and relentless. We would use their own weapons, patience and careful planning. "We can't trust anyone but Mr. Harrison," Zoe said. "Not even the police, considering some of the names in these documents." I nodded, studying the copies we had made of the most important documents. "We need a safety net first. People who can make this information public if something happens to us." Zoe nodded. "And we need to understand exactly who we're fighting against. Some of these names are too powerful to confront directly. So we start with the weaker ones," I suggested. "We create cracks in their system. A corrupt structure is only strong as long as everyone stays silent." In the following months, our lives took on a parallel dimension. By day, we continued to run the company and the support center. By night, we worked on our secret project, which we simply called Operation Aurora, a reference to the center, but also to the idea of bringing light to the shadows. Mr. Harrison was our most valuable ally, using his contacts with trustworthy prosecutors and journalists. We started slowly, leaking information about mid-level executives involved in minor schemes. As they fell and began to make plea deals, the web expanded. Each new development was carefully monitored. Every reaction from the main targets was analyzed. We were building not just a case, but a complete narrative of decades of corruption. It was during this process that I realized how much Zoe had changed. The fragile, insecure woman I knew had completely disappeared. In her place was a brilliant, brave, and determined strategist. She had finally found her purpose. As for me, I discovered a side of myself I didn't know I possessed. A willingness to fight not just against individual aggressors like Julian, but against entire systems of abuse and corruption. A year after finding Arthur's box, our operation reached its climax. A complete dossier with irrefutable proof was simultaneously delivered to various media outlets and specific judicial authorities we knew were incorruptible. The storm that followed was overwhelming. High-profile arrests, resignations, suicides. The system Arthur had feared confronting in life was finally being exposed and dismantled. Naturally, there were reprisals. Threats arrived. Attempts to discredit Zoe and the company appeared in the media. For weeks, we lived under protection, rarely leaving home except for essential commitments. It was during this turbulent period that Zoe made an unexpected proposal. "I'm thinking of selling the company," she said one night as we had dinner in my apartment, protected by security guards hired by Mr. Harrison. "Sell? Why? After everything we did to transform it?" "Exactly because of that," Zoe replied. "We fulfilled Arthur's purpose. We cleaned up the company. We exposed the guilty. Now I want to dedicate myself entirely to the center and expand it to other cities." I was silent, absorbing the idea. "What do you really want, Zoe?" She smiled. "I want to help people like me, like us. I want to use everything I've learned about power, about abuse, about survival to make a difference. The company was just a means, never the end." In that moment, I understood completely. Zoe had found not only her strength, but her mission. 6 months later, Aurora International Trade was sold to a group of investors committed to ethical practices, under strict clauses that guaranteed the continuity of the policies implemented by Zoe. The money from the sale, combined with what we had already accumulated, allowed us to expand the new Dawn Center to 3 new cities. We also created a foundation to fund research on domestic violence and prevention programs. Julian remained in prison, though he had attempted several appeals, all of which were rejected. Eleanor, ironically, had become a model patient in the prison, participating in prevention programs. On a particularly hectic afternoon, as we prepared for the inauguration of the new center in a neighboring state capital, Zoe surprised me with a question. "Do you regret it? Impersonating me in that house? Risking so much?" I looked at her. at the strong, determined woman my sister had become, at everything we had built, together since then. Never, I answered sincerely. Those days were a nightmare, but they showed me a truth I might never have discovered otherwise. What truth? That sometimes you have to lose yourself completely to find out who you really are. Zoe nodded, understanding perfectly. We're stronger than we ever imagined, aren't we? Much more, I agreed. And that strength didn't come from surviving the trauma. It came from choosing to transform it into something bigger than ourselves. As we finished the preparations for the inauguration ceremony, I watched the movement around us. Women who had been through the original center and were now volunteers, dedicated professionals, families rebuilding their lives. Thinking about the journey that brought us here, from the rainy night when Zoe arrived desperate at my door to this moment of purpose and fulfillment, I realized that our story, though marked by pain, was never just about survival. It was, from the beginning, about transformation, about how two women, reflections of each other, discovered that their greatest strength was not just in enduring the darkness, but in using that experience to create light for others. And as Zoe stepped onto the stage to give her inauguration speech, I realized that this was the true inheritance Arthur had left us. Not a company or a fortune, but the chance to redefine who we were and what we could become. Now, if you like this story, hit subscribe and tell me in the comments what part left you speechless. Oh, and don't forget to become a member to get access to exclusive videos I don't upload here. I'll see you there.